Hello, happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining me today. I wanted to just share with you a little bit about this idea of how we elevate our career beyond the status quo. But really, what is the status quo? I think sometimes when, we're kind of moving up in our career, we don't really know where exactly we're aiming. And then we kind of reach a level, maybe it's mid-career, mid to late stage, and it just becomes kind of this natural state of occurrence where we're just existing every single day. We have potentially some goals, which we're also really comfortable in some of the places that we're at too. And there's a lot of fear and ambiguity that surrounds the idea of moving up or moving beyond where it is that we currently sit. And so when I was thinking about status quo, what does that really mean? Like, is that where we just feel comfortable in our role and we just want to stay there? Have we given up hope on actually moving forward because we knew that in our 20s, 30s, it was just this incredible climb and incredible intensity, and we just don't want to continue in that mode? Is it the increased amount of responsibility that we're facing, the workload, the hours? There's just so many variables that start coming up when we're thinking about what's next in our career. When I'm working with clients, those are the types of questions that are coming up, because oftentimes it's like, I do want to try something new. I do want to see a change. I do want to have a greater impact. I have these skills and expertise that I know I can bring to the table, but I just don't know fully, A, what's required, and then B, am I willing to do what's required? Am I willing to invest in myself in the same ways that I did when I was younger? And that's also because we just, we don't have the same level of, energy that we did when we were younger, and our priorities have shifted. There's more to our lives because when we're younger, we did, potentially we don't have as much going on. And so then we might start having families. We might start having other things that we're responsible for, greater bills, mortgages. There's all kinds of things that start to come into play as we're growing within our careers. And so then we reach a point, and we're kind of like, is it worth it? Is it worth moving forward and, sticking my neck out there and trying something even different? Or should I just stay where I kind of know what I'm in, what I'm facing every single day? It's not exactly everything that I want, but it's comfortable. And so this is the thing that we grapple with quite often in this idea of status quo. And so I was listening to this conversation earlier today on the cycles of our careers, and it started to bring up some different questions for me because it was rather fascinating thinking about the cycles, and they were highlighting women's careers specifically. So, and starting out in our 20s, maybe we're highly ambitious. We're just in this zone of learning and then just sponges, taking everything in and growing as fast as we can. And then again, maybe in our 30s, maybe we do start a family or get married or, choose other things within our lives, and we start growing our responsibilities. And then it starts to shift for us. And so there was this idea that the busiest times in our lives are actually when we're supposed to be growing as fast as we can. And so there was this concept of the model of how we're climbing the career ladder and how it's not really set up for the cycles that women tend to face. And as I was thinking about this, I also wondered, what does this then mean? A, is it really only for women? And B, is there a change that needs to happen? Because there's this idea that, we do have more gender equality happening in the workplace. We're seeing more and more women coming in. We're seeing more and more women who are graduating and they're entering the workforce. And yet we still see this kind of disparity closer to the top. So why is that? Is it because it's not set up to support women's growth because we see greater mass exodus at a certain stage? Is it because of the things that are on women's plates as opposed to men? And I'm not really sure there because, I have a number of clients too. It's like they're taking paternity leave. They're supporting their spouses in a greater way. And I have a number of people I know who are, women who are the main breadwinners in their families. But it's not to say that their spouse doesn't work. It just happens to be that their income is greater. So there's all these complexities when it comes to thinking about our careers and how we're supposed to move to the next stage and build it into our lives. And so when I'm hearing oftentimes when people are talking about millennials and they're wanting greater work-life balance, and the assumption is because they're lazy. And I think that the old school way of thinking about it was that we would pour everything else that we had into our work, into our career, into our jobs, and that was supposed to bring us meaning and purpose and fulfillment. And what I think we're starting to see now is that we're not putting everything into our job because clearly within the economy, our jobs can come as go. People are not staying in the same company and retiring after 30 years. That's also not happening. So our perspective is starting to shift where we have other hobbies, we have other interests, we have other things that fill our cup and bring that meaning and purpose and value outside of our specific career and our role. So then how do we think about how do we support both? And this is true for all ages and stages, I think, in careers, because I see a lot more men and women who are, again, they're in their career for a while, they're not ready to make kind of a next leap, but they have other passions that they want to pursue, and maybe they put those off in their younger years, and now they want to start incorporating more of that. And then there's really that next phase, where do I want to move from here? Do I want to give back in a greater way? Do I want to be on a board as well? Do I want to co-found? Do I want to be an angel investor? And so we start having those types of conversations where how do I start to incorporate more of these types of pieces into my life and into my career in a way that brings meaning, but also brings balance? Again, I think we're starting to think about, to a greater extent, the longevity of our lives. We're living longer. So our career span is much longer. We're not seeing people rise up suddenly and then just retire right away. We're seeing longevity within careers, retirement ages moving much beyond what we were historically thinking. And so where does that leave us? Where does that leave us when we're thinking about what's that next step for ourselves? How do I evolve myself from here? There really isn't a playbook for that. There's a playbook for growing in this corporate ladder that has been historically present for a long time that supported a specific type of individual who, kind of the rest of their life was more or less taken care of. And our lives are messy. Everything is messy. Everything is integrated. We have, dual incomes. We can't afford to live without a dual income. The economy is more expensive. So how do we incorporate our careers into the messiness of our lives? And do organizations need to look at this at a greater level? Do we need to think about how do we move up in our organizations where we feel supported, where we feel valued, where, and our lives matter? And I feel like that's like this missing piece right now that we're facing. Like, do our lives matter? Do we matter? Or are we just, supposed to be robots working away? If we were to then greatly incorporate that and understand the different cycles of lives that people are in and build how people can grow in their careers around these concepts, would that then also bring greater motivation? We're seeing a decrease in motivation amongst people with an organization because, again, they're missing the key pieces that tell them that they're valued, that they're worthwhile, their ideas matter. That's where innovation comes from. That's where creativity comes from, and motivation to kind of go above and beyond. Fear-based tactics aren't working anymore. It's more so I want to create a life for myself because I think that on the inside, we're understanding the value that we do bring in the lives that we want to lead. And our leadership training, if we talk about leadership, that is what we've been pouring back into our people now, if we've been paying attention to Simon Sinek or other great leaders who are, pouring back into our teams, pouring back into our people and what it is that they desire. What are their natural strengths? How do they bring that to the table? How do we greater leverage that? And if we're ignoring all those pieces right now, we are doing such a disservice. So what does that mean then for us? How do I move forward? Where do I go from here? Everything feels very unstable, and yet I do want more. And I think these are the types of questions that are really starting to come up for people. And it's not out of laziness, it's out of wanting more. And if we could find that balance within our careers, if we could find that greater meaning and purpose, if we feel like we could align what it is that we're doing with what it is that we naturally bring to the table and leaning into the wisdom. So when we're talking about mid to later stage in our careers, how do we really leverage that wisdom? Because there's this idea that, we're supposed to just retire and then what do we do? And I don't think that idea sits very well for many of us. So then what do we do? Is it really a time where we start to step back? Is it a time where we just start to show service and give back in a greater way? Or really, is it a time where we can finally dive even deeper into our careers and bring greater alignment, knowing the wisdom that we now carry with us after the first 2-3 decades? I think this is the conversation that we need to be having so that we are supporting every stage of our careers, so that we are supporting and understanding the various life cycles that we are facing, so that it isn't the same dialogue that we're having around women and childcare, and then discounting the fact that many women just choose not to have children. And they're not choosing to not have children because of their career. And I think that's this fallacy that has come up so many times, which is, well, I chose not to have children because I can't have it all. And we clearly see that that's no longer the case. But we're just choosing not to because we don't want to. We just don't want to. And so that doesn't mean, though, that there isn't other things, that there aren't other things that are taking place. And so having that compassion and empathy for various stages also means the decisions and the choices that people make. And it doesn't mean that then we give more credence to one person over another. I know for many of us, too, we're taking care of family members, there's elder care. And again, we have other life goals. So if we can honor and respect our life goals, if we can honor and respect the wisdom that we bring, if we can honor and respect the cycles that we are in, how does that then change the conversations that we're having, amongst organizations, with our teams, and even with ourselves? Does that start to change how we view ourselves and whether or not it's possible for us to start taking on more, taking on different types of roles, obligations, responsibilities, given the fact that it might also mean that it doesn't more work, it just means greater responsibility. It just means that we are overseeing different things. A number of people who are doing multiple things. And so while young people, it might be normal to have kind of a side hustle that's going on. And as we get older, it starts to become more normal to be on a variety of boards or doing different types of work in addition to our main work. Maybe you're contributing also to research studies, writing papers. There's a multitude of ways that we can give back that we're not really talking about or exploring, at least that I see on the mainstream, because we're so focused on just keeping our job. And is this in service to the whole, collectively as an industry? Is this in service to that? Or do we need to think about maybe some shifts and changes that we can make? Oftentimes when I'm working with leaders, we start out talking about ourselves. How do we lead better? And ultimately it comes down to how do we systemically lead and bring about change within the organization? How do we systemically start to support and empower our people, and then therefore can empower ourselves? So how are you empowering yourself? Are you considering what's next for you? How does it sound for you to think about moving in maybe a different direction, or stepping up into another role, or transitioning to another role? I think many of us become overwhelmed, and so we just leave or we stay. But either way, we feel like our options are limited. And what if we could break down some of those barriers and make them feel limitless, where we have so much more ahead of us, so much more available to do than just sticking with this kind of heads down, marching along in the same path that we've already started because we don't feel like there's another choice? How do you bring your wisdom to the table, your experiences, your skills? And that's why I'm always talking about, Gay Hendricks and the zone of genius, because we're not always looking at the right things. We discount so many aspects of our lives and ourselves and what it is that we bring to the table. And there's just so much more that we can be doing. So, if the multitude of strategies that we can implement to start thinking about how do we, kind of open up the doors of possibility for ourselves and our careers, how do we start to create and embark upon a new journey that enables us to bring all of ourselves forward and enables us to do some of the things that we enjoy doing, and that we don't have to feel secretive or ashamed about that, but it further contributes back to who we are as an individual and how we contribute in a greater way. There's so much more that each of us brings to any one given thing. And so collectively, one individual cannot create change by themselves. It requires everybody coming in to create change and possibility. And so how do we change this conversation so that we're recognizing both, women and men and the changes that we're experiencing? And how do we change this conversation from millennials only wanting to have work-life balance, when I think that we all do, because we're all interested in different things, and it's not out of laziness, it's out of ambition. And so how do we really embrace ambition? How do we turn our, fires back up, so to speak? I'd love to chat with you. If this is interesting to you, I will be doing a workshop on May 6th. It will be 9 days, so May 6th through the 14th, talking about how we evolve our careers and ourselves, and how do we create strategies for moving forward. And also looking at the mindset and the neuroscience to move beyond blocks and narratives that we've created for ourselves and set us up for success. There's so many things that we do right now that just limit us and hold us back from creating more. And some of them are rather small. Some of it's really just about how do we manage our time better? How do we manage the chaos and the frequencies and the just static energy that's just constantly coming at us? And if we think about those types of things differently too, it's amazing how much more time we can find in our schedules to be able to focus on the right things, the different types of things in our lives, so that we can find possibility and create change. My goal is to help people. It's to create ease with finding what it is that we love and doing and enjoy doing. And then we can think about, how do we then move forward in that? How do we move forward with that in greater joy and ease and purpose, so that when we're thinking about our legacy, we're thinking about our future in such a way where we can look back and see that we were able to contribute in the ways that we felt aligned, really speaking to our core values and how that aligns for us. So if you're interested, I will put a link into the comments where you can go check it out, register. I'd love to have you. Again, it's a free 9-day workshop. We're really talking about how we get in there, thinking about our careers, developing strategies, and really pinpointing in ideas like, what is it that we want? What do we want more of in our lives? What do we want to increase and amplify? So let me know what you're thinking, how this resonates for you. Do you have other thoughts around some of this? I find it an interesting topic. I don't feel like I have fully wrapped my mind around some of it. I think we're scratching the surface. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are too. All right. Thank you for joining me today.